Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome back to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier VII Premium American Battleship USS Florida. Florida was recently announced with the big slate of the American battleship line, American battleship split, I should say. And of course, we'll look at Kansas, Minnesota, and Vermont in other videos. Florida was announced as a ship coming alongside this split as a premium warship at Tier VII. So, as is the case these days, right? I can show you the ship. We can look at it in port, look at the stats, compare her to other ships. I cannot show you gameplay. I actually don't play these ships anyway on my own time because I'm not a super tester, and since we're not allowed to show you guys gameplay and play the ship on stream, I just ignore it. I have other things to do with my time, but I like doing these videos. You guys have expressed lots of thanks for us, doing this. So I'm gonna continue to do these videos where we look around the ship. So let's get to it. First things first, survivability. Health pool, 63,800 hit points. This is pretty good for a Tier 7 battleship. Not best in tier, but definitely above average. I think 65,000 is Hood, and I think she's still the top, still the king of Tier 7 in terms of health pool. But this is pretty respectable. The torpedo protection here, 26%, pretty average, right? Not amazing, not awful. Not great, not terrible. Thanks, Chernobyl. She is, interestingly enough, when you start looking at her armor layout, she is very nearly the Tier 7 battleship with the least amount of belt armor. Now, Ashitaka still wins this category. She has 254 millimeters of belt armor, and you see here, Florida has 285 millimeters. So Florida's still ahead of things, but you start to get a sense that this ship maybe is not, like, it's a battleship, yes, but maybe it starts to play a little more battle cruisery. Couple of things I want to point out about her armor scheme. One is the 37 millimeter of deck armor. Why is this relevant? Well, I'll tell you. Most Tier 7 battleships have 26 or 30 millimeters of deck plating. Hood, Gneisenau, and Scharnhorst all have 50 or 51 millimeters, but they are very much the outliers. This 37 millimeters means that non-German heavy cruiser high explosive shells will not get full penetrations through Florida's deck. This is going to give her some extra resiliency when she's fighting, HE heavy cruisers, like, say, a Miyoko or a Surrey, at longer ranges where their shells are going to come plunging down onto her deck. They'll shatter on this deck, and she'll take little to no damage other than the chance of just catching on fire. Now, of course, that does not apply to a cruiser like Tier 7's York in the German line because they get quarter penetration on 210 millimeter shells, so she does have the penetration to get through this deck. Another thing I want to point out, okay, and I'll cut back and get away from the armor, but you see here, these, Florida is quadruple-barreled turrets. This is very odd and very unique for the American battleship line, and we'll talk more about this in a minute. But from a survivability standpoint, I want to point this out, okay? The French battleship line was going through testing when it was a lot of discussion, some thunder, a lot of discussion about those turrets getting disabled, right? You're looking at 4 barrels going away. That could be up to a 30 or firepower if one of these turrets gets disabled. So, as you can see, these are very French-looking turrets, right? 4 barrels each, but they're shaped more like traditional American battleship turrets. This glacis plate, for example, has a much steeper slope on it than if you were to go look at the turrets on, say, a Richelieu, okay? Now, it has less armor. This is 406 millimeters. The glacis armor on, I think, Ritchie and Jean Bart, for example, I think is like 490 something or 460. There's more armor on those turrets, but you've got more slope here. So, is this significant? I don't know, but to me it is something that we should keep an eye on as we start asking ourselves, looking at reviews later on, how the ship plays. Are these turrets vulnerable? Because you're looking at decent chunks of her firepower getting knocked out when you get a turret disabled, turret in cap. Maneuverability and concealment. Let us have a check. Now, one of the things I haven't talked about yet, but if you kind of just pull back the camera and look, this ship really, really looks like USS North Carolina at Tier VIII, right? She has her hull shape, her hull form, the way the hull is just, the lines on the ship, even the superstructure, are very, very similar to North Carolina at Tier VIII. So, underscoring this, kind of heightening these similarities, is her maneuverability. She has 27 knot max speed. That's almost exactly what North Carolina has. And she has a 760 meter turning circle. That is North Carolina's turning circle. She has better rudder shift. So You look at all this put together, and to me, this ship should handle essentially like USS North Carolina at Tier 8. Florida, however, is stealthier. Now, this is interesting, okay? This detection radius is very, very noteworthy. A full stealth Florida can get down to 11.7 kilometers of detection. That moves her just ahead of her premium cousin, Tier VII American battleship USS California, for best in tier battleship stealth. There are Tier 7 cruisers, for example, that are easier to spot on the surface than a full stealth rig Florida. That's like a York and an Algerie, both clock in around 12 and change, and there are still some cruisers that are in the high 11s. So this thing is a battleship that doesn't give up much to some of the heavy cruisers in this tier in terms of stealth. That can be really, really cool. Florida's main battery is, I won't say it's unique. The configuration is unique, right? These quad-barreled turrets, 3 of these quad-barreled turrets, that is unique in the American line. However, okay, as you've no doubt discerned by now, these are not 16-inch barrels. These are 14-inch barrels. Like USS California, like New Mexico at Tier 6, Florida brings 12 14-inch barrels to the dance, but as we've kind of been underscoring up to this point, the hull these barrels are mounted on aren't anything like California's at all. It does turn out, though, that these guns are pretty similar. Of course, same shells, same damage, same shell velocities. These are actually the exact same guns mounted by Tier 6 New Mexico, right, in the tech tree. They're not exactly the same as California. These are Mark 11s. California's are Mark 7s. Florida has almost exactly the same range as New Mexico, 18.6 kilometers you see here, and 18.7 for New Mexico. By comparison, California's range is just shy of 20 kilometers, clocking in at 19.9. So the bottom line is, if you've played either Tier 6 New Mexico in the tech tree or Tier 7 Premium American Battleship California, you're familiar with these guns and what they can do. You're used to how fast the shells travel, how hard they hit, what they can pen and what they can't pen, etc., etc., etc. There's nothing to write home about here in terms of reload and so on and so forth. It is what it is. It's very similar. She doesn't have the gimped reload speed like California does, right? California's reload is 34 something seconds, right? Florida right now, 30 seconds, so that's really, really nice. Secondary battery, nothing really to write home about here. She has 6 of the ubiquitous, pull these up here, I'm looking at the wrong gun, here we go. The double-barreled, dual-barreled 5-inch 38s, right, these are everywhere. These have a base range of 5 kilometers, same as these single-mounted barrel mounts of the same gun. This is actually the main battery turret from a Fletcher-class destroyer, same exact gun, and 5-kilometer base here. You can probably push these out to about 7.5 with the right mix of stuff, skills and upgrades and stuff if you really want to, but it's probably not worth it. Speaking of anti-aircraft, now when you start to look over her AA, things get kind of juicy, and you might expect this for an American battleship. Florida's anti-aircraft suite isn't quite as robust as California's, but it is still one of the best in the tier. Her long-range suite is essentially equivalent to that of Tier 7 German battleship Gneisenau, who has basically the best long-range aura at Tier 7. But her mid-range aura blows Gneisenau's out of the water and is basically the same as Colorado's. If you look at California, most of California's AA punch and raw DPS comes out of her short-range aura, but the same cannot be said of Florida. She packs about 60% of her effective AA DPS into her 2 outermost AA rings. That is really, really bad news for enemy planes. Compounding the bad news for enemy aircraft is this. Florida becomes the second Tier 7 battleship to gain access to the defensive AA fire consumable, just like HMS Hood. This is the standard DFAA consumable, right? You see there 50% continuous damage and a nice hefty bonus to flak. So I won't go so far as to call this ship a no-fly zone. I can't say that without testing her, but no CV player is going to want to mess around with the AR on this ship. That is just, nobody wants to mess with it, okay? Her remaining consumables are standard stuff, right? Damage control party, repair party, and a choice here between a spotter and a catapult fighter. The spotter is probably a very good pick for this ship, gives you access to some extra bonus range or a different shot angle when you're trying to shoot over islands or something like that. The catapult fighter to me feels redundant just looking over how robust the AA suite on this ship is. I feel like you're probably not going to get much mileage. You're going to get more mileage, let's say, out of the spotting aircraft than you will out of the catapult fighter. So Yeah, on the whole, I really like what I'm seeing so far on Florida. I really want to play this ship. She has that battle cruiser-like armor scheme, kind of. She's still missing out on the speed of, say, a Ganice or a Sharn. One of the of all the American battleships that recently announced, this is one that I'm really piques my interest. I cannot wait to try this ship. Whereas at the moment, I have no desire to even play Kansas, Minnesota, or Vermont in their current iterations. The same way I was loath to play USS California. Florida, in my opinion, has enough interesting things going for her that I'm really curious to see how she performs once I can take her into a game. Anyway, guys, there's our first look at USS Florida. Hope you enjoyed that. Be safe out there, wash your hands, and I'll catch you next time.